Today is the 4th of July 2023 and it is time to do another garden tour, see how things are going. I intended to do this a few days ago, but the weather just did not cooperate. So we'll be doing a slightly late tour of our garden. We were able to get the herbs into some pots. This one here is all spearmint, and this one here has a variety of thyme, and in the very middle is our single surviving oregano. These are all the Jiffy pellets where things did not germinate, and yet we finally got a single lemon cucumber, and well, we'll transplant that in a bit. And here we have the lemongrass, which seems to be enjoying life. We've had a lot of rain lately and quite a storm the other night. So it's actually, we have high winds right now. So if you hear cracking noises, that's dead branches falling down. This bed of Irish cobbler potatoes had been blown over almost flat by the wind, but it has straightened itself up quite nicely. We did not plant these flowers, they're self-seeded. And check out these peppers. Look at that. These are the sweet chocolates. The shallots in this bed are doing all right. Hello, Gooby. And we've got, this is the German winter thyme. There was one in the middle here that died, and so we now have the strawberries that were started from seed in here. I planted them all along here. We have some more little peppers trying to form in here. So some more little strawberries, and then this is the single surviving classic eggplant. And then with the other peppers that we started later in the season, we've got one each of this early summer sensation, early sensation, cayenne, and dragonfly. And then we've got some loofah. There's actually 3 of them. 2 of them germinated much later. But this is the first one, and check out the size of that leaf. That's the biggest of any attempt we've had to grow loofah. Here we have the red thumb potatoes, and they've been blooming and doing really well. And there's more of them on this side over here. They've also been doing very well. I'm quite happy with how they're turning out. Here in the shallot bed, I've allowed poppies and dill to grow while weeding everything else. These other poppies here turned out to be a double scarlet. We didn't plant those, they predate us, they came up on their own. Hopefully these ones in here will be the giant rattle poppies that we planted in this area for the past 2 years. And I'm thinking we'll probably end up planting that cucumber in here later on. My daughter's daffodils look smushed. I think the cats have been going in there. I keep forgetting about this little guy. This is the mystery squash that grew on its own in the corner of the wattle weave bed where those peppers are. And I transplanted it over here, and it's actually surviving. Here's another look at those poppies that's self-seeded, along with the dill that came up on its own. And we also have the walking onions that I planted in the fall. They're getting quite big. We've harvested some of this rhubarb. The one on this side is doing well. The one on the other side, I don't think it gets as much light. The chives are done, they're blooming. This is spoon tomato. One broke after it was transplanted. And when one last seedling suddenly germinated, I just transplanted it into here. And here we have more of the spoon tomatoes wrapped around the stakes to hold them up. And the mint. And those potatoes, gosh, they look so good. I look forward to trying them. These are onions that we found while we were cleaning up the beds from last year, and they're doing okay. And let's see if I can get close enough to see Here we have some. These are some spoon tomatoes forming. And they get at biggest about the size of a pea. There's some more over here. So I'm quite happy to see that. Would you look at that? Our very first poppy that we seeded ourselves has bloomed. These should be the Hungarian blue. When we first seeded it, I did not think they took. It was so full of weeds for the longest time. But they have emerged, and oh, I cleaned up branches, but I'm still finding pieces I've missed. So the plan is that this bed will be allowed to seed itself and become a permanent poppy bed. You look at this, it's so pretty. Here we have the Zucca African drum gourd and caveman gourds. They are not very robust, even though they are climbing the trellis, the chain link fence as a trellis quite enthusiastically. Blooming, still only male flowers, but you know, we'll see how it goes. These two little finger eggplants are struggling to survive. They're so small they probably shouldn't have been transplanted, but I don't like letting them go to waste. These other three are much stronger, especially this one here at the end. And yes, they do actually get full sunlight later in the day, different parts of the day. Just happen to be in shade right now. And then over here, we have so many pea pods forming. They got onions over here that were found that were from last year. They're doing very well. Unfortunately, these ridiculous Chinese elm here left so many millions of seeds that they drifted into here and smothered the bok choy. And the only ones that have, hey, Gooby, get out of there. The only ones that have survived have already bolted. So I'm just going to let them go to seed. Gooby, stop that. All right, so what I ended up doing was transplanting onions in the gaps in between. These are onions that were so small they probably should not have been transplanted, but give them a try, right? Over here we have the lettuce, the Czechoslovakian lettuce variety that we tried, and amazingly we actually are getting some. But you can see all these elms are trying to take over. It's a constant battle with those. And we also planted the tiniest of onions as well, transplanted them in between. And we'll see if they actually survive. And then when we get to the end here, I discovered this morning, I was trying to figure out why this was looking so dry, and there's a pea that was pulled out completely. And then I found that these ones at the end had their heads chopped off. And that's from a deer, which is why we have this set up over here. The deer came and ate the strawberry greens. They're still alive. They might survive. Well, will probably survive. They don't seem to like the asparagus, which I'm happy with, but apparently deer like the greens from strawberries. And then over here we have the Jerusalem artichoke or sunchokes. They're doing quite well, and once we could tell the difference between them and the weeds, this bed got a really thorough mulching. Lots of grass clippings. So these beds are doing well. We went from not being sure the carrots were germinating at all to they're doing pretty good. But you can really tell that this end of the bed gets more sunlight than this end of the bed. I have plenty of grass clippings to use as mulch as time goes. Here's the Tom Thumb corn. This corn only gets about 2 feet high, so they're getting close to full height. And I remember seeing one somewhere was even starting to form tassels. Can't see it right now. These onions are onions we found while we were preparing the beds and just transplanted them. So these are red onions from last year. Just like over here, these two garlic were from last year. We found them. And then this bed, which had the spinach, We transplanted a couple of rows of onions in between, so you can see those are the stronger looking onions. And after we harvested the spinach that was bolting, we filled the spaces with more onions. So this is all red of Florence onions. This area is where we had ground cherries last year. I thought that they might sow themselves and come up again this year. That was the experiment. They did not. So I have since mulched this completely to make sure that it doesn't get taken over with weeds, and we'll turn it into a permanent bed later. But we also had some Ozark nest egg gourds germinate really late. And so I just went ahead and transplanted them here. So there's one little one there, there, and there. So we've got those. And a big surprise is our compost heap, which got some gigantic squash over here, probably a pumpkin, and more over here. But the big surprise is that we've got beans. I don't know why there'd be beans in our compost heap. We usually just have either green beans, but bean seeds don't usually end up in the compost. And if you're wondering about what looks like a plastic bag in there, that's a compost bin liner bag, so it's biodegradable. But yeah, it should be interesting to find out what these squash are. Okay, we're working on a major project over here. In this area, we have a lot of dead spruce trees. When my brother and his wife came out to help us with the lawn mowing and took our broken lawnmower back with them, loaned us their riding mower, one of them. And so he cut down 4 trees for me. And this is where 2 of them were. It took an hour and a half to clear a single tree out of here. And then there was a second one. That one was long enough, it actually extended all the way to a stump at the far end there. This one, it got stuck on the trees here, and then the wind knocked it down further, and then the last storm we had knocked it down there. It's not going to drop any farther because it is absolutely jammed among some trees. At least 2 of them are dead. So, we'll cut those down and maybe get it down that way. But the base of this is so thick, we'll cut the bottom 10 feet away, and it will be used for vertical support in the shelter for an outdoor kitchen we plan to build. And these stumps are nice and tall. Eventually we're going to, once the dead trees are all down, we'll convert them to either chairs or tables, depending on what seems good for the space. And this is the 4th tree that he's cut down. I had a hard time actually finding it, and I don't know how far it extends that way. So I'll probably end up clearing it from the other end before I can get it out. So yeah, all these dead trees are going to be used to build garden beds and other structures, because the wood is still not rotten, it's very strong. And look, there's a gooby. Hey gooby. So yeah, nothing is going to go to waste. Oh, this is the top of a smaller tree that I cut down. And I'll clear that up later, because this top part is too narrow to use as part of the garden bed, but I might be able to use it because it's nice and straight, and so it'll probably get used as some sort of a vertical or horizontal support. I will be doing a full video on the construction of this when they're finished, but for now this is what we've got. We've measured out what's going to be 18 feet by 4 feet beds, a pair of them with a 4-foot path in between. That's where those 2 logs are. And then we'll have a trellis tunnel joining the 2 beds. In marking these out, I actually couldn't put the posts into the ground where they were measured because I kept hitting rocks, and I couldn't move them to someplace else because this is a measured location. So I had to use bricks and rocks and whatever I could find to prop up the rocks, the posts. Eventually, another pair of these will be built here. So we'll have another pair of beds with a trellis tunnel between them, and at least one more over here. Oh my goodness, we just completely lost this area. Oh well. Here we have the Crespo squash growing way off in the distance. They're growing quite enthusiastically, the four of them, blooming a lot. But they're not very robust compared to the first year we tried to grow them. But then the first year we tried to grow them, they got absolutely eaten by groundhogs and deer. Hopefully that will not, well, we haven't seen groundhogs in a while, but deer are still a problem. But yeah, hopefully we'll actually see what a Crespo squash looks like, because last I saw, they no longer carried the seeds at Baker Creek. The raspberries we transplanted this spring are actually going to produce fruit, which I was not expected to see until next year, but all three of them are producing fruit. I cut away some of the branches that were directly above these poor little raspberries. We actually planted these a couple of years ago. They got flooded out last year, drought the year before, and deer ate them. But they're surviving somehow. Have yet to produce anything because, well, things have been trying to destroy them. Hopefully next year we'll get something out of them. These raspberries predate us. They are self-seeded. They are from what my mother used to grow, and as you can tell, there are lots of berries forming, and we're gonna have ripe raspberries soon. I'm really looking forward to finally having a decent amount of raspberries. And these flowers over here my mother planted. More raspberries. That currant bush is under too much shade. At some point we'll probably transplant it out to where the silver buffalo berry are, so it'll get some good sunlight. And here we have chokecherries starting to form. Something else we're going to have a decent amount of this year are Saskatoon berries. These trees we discovered when we cleaned up in this area, and we still need to do more cleanup. This elm is going to kill off the Saskatoons if I leave it there. The big killer is all this spirea, and we cleared all this area out completely, and it's all grown back. Another thing we're going to be getting rid of is there's some chokecherry trees in here, and we don't need a lot of chokecherry trees because they are very prolific and don't get used as much, but we do want to encourage the Saskatoons. And long-term plan, this area back here, I actually did get all this spirea out and it just grew back. If there's even a tiny bit of root left behind, it'll come back. So I have to clear out this spirea again. It's very invasive, but eventually, and then we still need to get rid of 3 big dead trees over there. This area is going to be cleaned out, and the plan is to have some nice seating in here and a nice quiet area where we can just sit and enjoy being in the trees with some shade and shelter. Here we have the Crespo squash growing way off in the distance. They're growing quite enthusiastically, the 4 of them, blooming a lot. But they're not very robust compared to the first year we tried to grow them. But then the first year we tried to grow them, they got absolutely eaten by groundhogs and deer. Hopefully that will not, well, we haven't seen groundhogs in a while, but deer are still a problem. But yeah, hopefully we'll actually see what a Crespo squash looks like, because last I saw, they no longer carried the seeds at Baker Creek. In this high raised bed, we've got beans. We have yellow beans on one side, green beans on the other, and the last of yellow onions that we transplanted. They're just the tiniest of seedlings, but they're surviving. We normally plant a lot more beans than this, but it just didn't work out this year, so we'll just have this for this year. Here we have the Roma VF tomatoes, and they don't, some of them don't look very healthy. Okay, they're kind of yellowing, but there's lots of tomatoes forming. I'm really pleased to see that there are so many of them. I look forward to it. We intended to plant a lot more. We just didn't have the space for the transplants. I ended up giving away probably another 30 or so transplants of the Roma, plus another, I think, 13 of the spoon tomatoes, and a whole bunch of peppers that we just didn't have room for. I hope they make other people very happy. We had 3 of 4 types of melon. We started indoors, germinate very, very late. But they did germinate, and so I converted this little kiddie pool, punched some holes in the bottom for drainage, and turned it into a grow bed and rigged together this trellis because these are all climbing varieties. We'll see what we get out of it. And then over here, these bags have the hot peppers in them, and the last of, I forget what type of onions these are. And then these are the purple Peruvian potatoes, and they are looking really fabulous. I'm very happy. Look at those beautiful flowers. So they're doing well. And then we have, which peppers are these? Okay, these are dragonfly in these 2 bags. These ones are the early sensation peppers. And these ones are the early summer peppers. There was 4 of them, but something ate one of them. And then we have the a variety of red onions. I believe these are red Wethersfield onions. No, these are more red of Florence. The red Wethersfield all ended up in one bed. This is the bed that has the red Wethersfield onions in it. And this is also the bed with the Black Beauty tomatoes. Check that out. So we've got them going. And one thing we're seeing a lot of this year is so many frogs, and I'm happy, so happy to see so many frogs, because they like to eat the slugs and other pests that would be eating our vegetables. And I am happy, very happy, to see how well the gold ball turnip is doing. Yes, something is eating the leaves, but they are surviving. The beets, on the other hand, are not doing well. A lot of them just didn't really germinate. And of course, like everything else, got these elms coming up. But yeah, I'm not sure what happened with the beets. But our first year we grew beets, they did really well. And every year since then, they've been doing poorer and poorer. So, I'm not sure why that would be. But anyways, here we have the indigo blue chocolate tomatoes. And check out, they are such pretty tomatoes. And then we've got yellow onions growing around this bed. So I'm quite pleased with how these ones are doing. Get off my onions! Get off my onions! Off, 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 off. I just found the cat in the middle of the garden bed again, so I've switched the hose. Got sprinkler hoses on here and another one on here, which is helpful. Because even with the rain we've been having, these beds do dry out very quickly, even with the mulch. Here, our sad little garlic bed. 3 different types of garlic. We'll have garlic to enjoy, but this is like maybe a third of what we should be growing for what we like to use. And then here we have the Montana Murado purple corn. They're doing all right. What I'll be doing, I have decided I will plant some climbing beans in between them. And the beans can climb the stalks, which can get quite tall, and add nitrogen to the soil and hopefully give these corn stalks the nitrogen they need to grow big. Here we have the big squash patch, and oh my goodness, this one has been a battle. After a rainfall, I came over to check and discovered that it was just this teeming mass of slugs all over the place. So I did some reading, and apparently slugs like to eat cornmeal, but cornmeal kills them. So I have slug traps in jars, but we didn't have enough jars for all these plants. So I ended up making a sprinkler out of an old margarine container, a sour cream container, and sprinkled cornmeal around every plant. And that seemed to do the trick. Now, there was a winter squash in here that something ate it. I transplanted the Jiffy pellets that had the cream of Saskatchewan watermelon in here, just in case, because things sometimes do germinate later, but doesn't seem to be happening. I also added a bunch of these broken crocks and pots to make frog shelters, and in hopes that the frogs will hang out here more often and eat up the slugs. So there's one over there too. Now the ones over here that are mulched in rows over here, the big plants, these are all winter squash. And some of them I planted the non-germinated Jiffy pellet and they came up. So this one actually came up after this one was transplanted, and you just can't tell the difference between them. Now, this over here is a summer squash. There were 3 planted in this mound, and slugs ate one of them and the other didn't germinate. Oh my goodness, is that? Look at that. Finally, I replanted these are the green zucchini. And so slowly some of them are germinating. There's nothing in here. This is the sunburst patty pan that I replanted. There's only one surviving one over here. And then these are the Magda. Again, I replanted them and there's nothing. But the G-Star patty pans did okay. And we have one Goldie summer squash, and the other doesn't look like anything is germinating. I planted 3 seeds per mound. But we might actually have winter squash this year, which will be very exciting. I'd like to find out what some of these actually taste like. And then there's these guys. I'm quite happy with how they're doing. These are African drum gourds and Zucca melon. I saw the Zucca melon at the chain link fence. This is much longer, blooming, but not robust. These ones are very robust. So I think these ones are doing better than the ones at the chain link fence. So this is how our garden stands, in the main garden area at least, as of July 4, 2023. And hopefully we'll actually get a much better growing year than we had last year and have some decent produce, even though our actual gardening area is much smaller than last year, simply because we didn't get those other beds prepared in time. But hopefully that means that we'll get it done over the summer, and next year we'll have a much larger garden.